Now, we've covered almost every single Lexus product, including this RC. This happens to be the all-wheel drive F Sport variant. We've done a video celebrating the V8 products for the F cars, and the upcoming IS500 with the V8, we're gonna cover that and all the trim levels soon. But I felt like this RC350 is a great place to talk about what Lexus was doing in the past and the great things they do, and of course, where they have fallen behind. So let's get started on the interior space. Now, my love-hate relationship with this car and many Lexus products is they have a great grip on interior design, modernism, and material choice. The door panel is the perfect example of this. Take a look at it. You have all these matte textures. You have this machined-looking piece of plastic by the switches. No glossy plastic anywhere in this car. You have this alloy trim piece that runs across the center part of the door with matte chrome. The leathers have contrasting stitching. You have this chrome piece around the speaker grille. It looks very good. And the door panel is super solid. There's no buzzing, creaking, or rattling coming from it. And you just are pulled in by these clever uses of just subtleties in this entire interior space, and that is what they do amazing. However, at least in this coupe variant, they sacrifice a lot of usability for those aesthetic choices. The audio system takes a big hit. You have a large mid-range driver port on the door, but no upper tweeter, so it creates a lot of reflections putting on the upper dashboard, so the audio system suffers there. Usability suffers in the door because they made it look so nice that now there's no place to put a bottle. You're pretty much only going to use that to store a wallet or your phone. And then in terms of practicality and the rest of the car, the armrest is compromised. It's super small. And I could probably be okay with this if you had a high level of performance on tap here. And with the V6 offering, at least, or the 4-popper, you don't get that. This is kind of that compromised, I like the look of the sports car, but I don't particularly want all of the creature comforts. I don't really get it. And I think that's where the IS350 or the IS500, the update, is a little bit more appealing in that regard. But the negative part is if you're somebody that needs a good solid piece of software design or technology, this does not have it. The infotainment looks archaic, and for me, I'm okay with that. That's why I like Lexus products, because I don't want it. I just turn off the screen. But I think a lot of people that are coming into this brand are starting to expect better integration that they don't do here. Their gauge cluster that they've pulled out of the LFA on the F Sport models looks really good. Still, it has aged completely well because, again, it's elegant. There's a physical dial or physical bezel around the screen, so it looks more that it's a good blend of mechanical and technology together. But really, the thing is, you want to know, how is it like to live with this? And I would say the interior is comfortable, it's compromised, but the seat adjustability is great. You can be a toddler and fit in here. There's so much seat adjustment forward. Even if you're taller, you could fit towards the back. But if you choose the all-wheel drive model, you have the transfer case protruding into the driver's cell. So your leg is on this enormous hump here, and that's probably going to be the biggest deal breaker if you're a bigger person. But we've already covered all the mechanical stuff in the shop. Let's take this for a ride and kind of talk about where this car is to where it started and where it is today. I am back in the RC350 F Sport, this time all-wheel drive. Now, we know a lot about this car. We've done a ton of videos on it, so let's just get this off the line. So just briefly, the 3.5 liter has been carried over. The big change here with the all-wheel drive version is you get stuck with the 6-speed automatic. And in terms of a driving experience, let's just get this out of the way. This is a more confined interior space. It's far less usable. With the F Sport, you get a more sporty suspension. And then you get kind of all these drive modes. You can go into manual mode, but the reality is, if you're looking at the all-wheel drive version of this car, it doesn't do a good job. It's vastly dated at this point. The automatic transmission is best left in automatic, and in manual mode, the manual control is really, really bad compared to modern standards. That, and there seems to be some delay in terms of If you happen to shift too close to the red line without hitting the fuel cutoff, there's a huge cut in timing and delay before it returns power on the next gear shift. And it's to the point where it feels like the thing is broken. It is almost designed to tell you, do not manually shift this car. So you have a stiffer suspension, you have this sporty look, you have kind of the fake engine noise, which I'll cover in a minute, and then you kind of limit this all with the automatic transmission not being very fun to operate. And to me, this makes at least the all-wheel drive version of this car really confusing. And I'm not sure why you would get this other than you're in a bad climate, you want the look of it, you want that Lexus build quality, and you know the reliability is there. But in terms of fun to drive, this doesn't have a lot. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the other things. You know, there's a proliferation of fake engine noise being implemented in a lot of cars. Now with Lexus, you know, they've done this on the RCF as well, which doesn't have a defeatable switch, but they did put it here. So if you're accelerating in this car, it sounds like a synthesizer through the speakers with it fully on, but you can adjust it, which is kind of really nice. So this car has so much good induction tone because it's naturally aspirated that there's absolutely no reason why you would, in any good conscience, leave it on unless, you know, you like hearing fake engine noise. But I think, you know, the main thing that you're gonna buy the RC for, it doesn't matter what trim level, is this is a unique car. It is vastly deficient in terms of the competition. We know that Toyota was trying to reboot Lexus into something that wasn't a total snooze fest. They've injected a bit of passion into all of their designs, and this is one of the oldest iterations of all of that. It's not on its own architecture, it hasn't been updated. In terms of body and ride control, it's too stiff for what it is. It doesn't handle well over broken pavement. And the trade-off of having a stiff suspension means it should handle well, which it tends to feel more understeery and too safe. It's basically, I would have to say, it needs a complete rework. It needs a complete rework as a coupe, as a sporty car. This doesn't do it. So where does that leave us with the RC? Well, I think, you know, for me, I get in this every day I've driven it, and I've wanted to get back into it every single time I drove it. I didn't want to get into the other press cars. In fact, I didn't want to get into some of my own cars because on most normal commutes and daily drives, it's super smooth, and the interior build quality is great. It really is, and it looks so special compared to many of the other cars. So in all these flawed ways, the car feels like they could have done so much more with this. But I just feel like, you know, Lexus is definitely moving towards a new direction of where they want to go as a brand. And I'll be curious to see what they do with the next generation higher end, moving into electrification. This and the IS, to me, represent kind of the best of what Lexus was trying to do during the reboot, but that's not going to be enough for somebody that's come out of the modern Audis or Mercedes and mostly BMWs. This is a really, really hard sell for those people unless you are a die-hard Toyota Lexus person. And that's probably why I'm also making some excuses for it. But let's head into the final thoughts and cover the basics and pros and cons. Final thoughts on the RC350 F Sport all-wheel drive. Now, I talked about it during the drive segment. This is a confusing car. It's on an older architecture. They've updated the looks. It's got a great interior. It really does if you like that Japanese style. The exterior is a bit confused. It was like half concept, half turning the IS into a coupe. It's just weird, and you're gonna love it or you're gonna hate it. I think the updates have made it way more relevant, but in terms of the mechanical design, it is lagged way behind. The all-wheel drive setup does not allow you to have any fun. The automatic transmission removes any chance of you getting true manual control of this car. So where does it leave it? Well, I think if you're in a bad climate and you have to have a coupe, which with the IS coming out kind of just makes this car even more irrelevant, it's tricky. But the biggest thing for me is if I was looking in the used market for one of these at around $35,000 or $35,000 to $40,000 for a lower mileage example, it is a really cool car to get into if you're trying to kind of move up that chain. It's still accessible and it still has a little bit of that special factor to it that many of the kind of luxury car makers have engineered out of it. That's what I'm trying to say. This is completely flawed. And in fact, if you were going to rank it like what's the best cars, this would not be high up there objectively. But I think there's enough character in it. There's enough like soul to it that makes it something that you'd want to look at. Now, obviously, I would not choose the all-wheel drive version. Absolutely not. It strips out too much. So if you went to the rear-wheel drive version with the F Sport and the 8-speed, it is a totally different car. I love the engine. It is amazing, even though it doesn't make a ton of horsepower on paper. It's a car that, you know, again, you can't really have a good sales pitch for because the numbers don't add up to what it really is. And I'm just going to leave it there. We'll cover the IS 500 and the IS 350 F Sport in great detail soon. But thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Now, before you go, you may wonder how to support Savage Geese. Because believe it or not, many of these projects are out of pocket. So you can use Patreon, you can subscribe, or maybe you want to buy stuff. Because on the internet, I hear merchandising's a big deal. But I've always said I don't want to sell products. That's why we partnered with Car Supplies Warehouse or Chicago Auto Pros, a local business to us, who will handle the order taking online and then shipping a select amount of t-shirts to you that are ethically sourced and made in the United States. That was a prerequisite of mine. So some of the proceeds will go to them for doing all the work. Some will go back to us for future projects. And then the leftover that we have, a certain percentage at the end of the year, will be donated to AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention. So whatever you choose, thank you for your support.